Good morning, everyone, and welcome to FBP Live episode 20. Today, we're going to talk about forms and systems to streamline your podcast. So, welcome along. My name is Chantal Broderick. I am the host of the Fitness Business Podcast. And yes, you're tuning into FBP Live, and we are nearly all the way through our series on how to start your very own podcast. So guys, I want to thank you so much for joining me. I know I've had a few of you along the journey the entire way through, and some of you kind of jumped in and out and caught up on old episodes. And so before we get into today's topic, I first wanted to remind you that if you do want to catch up on any of the previous episodes, then all you need to do is, of course, jump onto our YouTube channel. So jump onto YouTube and just search for Fitness Business Podcast. And on that YouTube channel, you can go back and watch any of these FBP Live episodes about how to start your own podcast. And not only that, you can actually tune into any of our podcasts forever from day one. And I did a count the other day. Hey, Patrick, thanks for coming on. I did a count the other day, and we're at 171 shows, and we've been putting out podcasts for 156 weeks in a row. So it's pretty incredible. So yeah, you can jump onto YouTube and check all of that out, and check out the FBP Live as well. But the reason we're here today is because we're going to talk about forms and systems to streamline your podcast. And to be completely honest, this applies to any part of your business. For us, implementing forms and starting to use particular systems made a huge difference when it came to the efficiency of our podcast, when it came to organizing the show from week to week and repurposing the show after we'd actually produced it. So the first thing I want to talk to you about is actually a form. And when we first started doing the podcast, and those of you that tune in regularly know that the format for our show is that we've got a guest every single week. Now, just to step you through the process of actually getting that guest, it can be quite a lengthy process. So if you imagine, if we want to reach out to a Instagram expert, for example, to come on and talk on the show, the first step that we would do would be to either connect with them on LinkedIn or jump onto their website or somehow send out a connection, which a lot of time is like cold calling. You know, we might not necessarily have a relationship or have a rapport with a particular person. So first thing we would do is send out an email to that person, establish the relationship, tell them a little bit about the show. And then the second step, once they had said, yes, we're happy to come on the show, we would then email them back and say, look, here's what we need. We need your bio. We need a photograph. We need your social media platforms. We need to know what books you want to promote or what courses you're doing, that type of thing. So what ended up happening was it was quite a lengthy process to go back and forth, generally between myself or one of the team and the guest that was coming on the show. Not only from an information perspective, but just down to the detail of actually booking in a time to conduct the interview, especially when you're working with different countries and different time zones. So what we learned, and it took a little while to learn this, is that our life would be so much simpler and things would be a lot faster if we actually created a form for that guest to fill out. So what we did is through our WordPress website, and I'm going to screenshot this form and put it in the comments so you guys can have a look at it. We created a standardized form for every single guest. So obviously this is something that you can utilize if on your podcast you do decide to interview people, and I strongly encourage you to use a form. And the other way that you could use it, if you didn't necessarily have a guest and maybe your podcast is just you talking, but perhaps every so often you might have someone come in to promote their product, or you might be talking to someone about an event that they're doing, or you might have an industry association come on and chat to you, you can utilize this form for those instances as well. So with this particular form, we basically ask the guest their name, their social media details. We ask for their bio. They upload a headshot that we can use in the show notes. We ask them any of the, or all of, I should say, the pre-call quickfire 5 questions. And that's something we only implemented a little bit later on, but we actually get them to pre-answer that before we record it. And the reason that we do that is because it just gives us or gives me in particular, a bit of an idea of what they're going to say. It can allow me a little bit more time to research some of their answers. We don't actually get them to answer the main questions before the show, but we do get them to answer the pre-call quick fire 5. So yeah, they're the main things that are included in the form. I'm going to flick over to, I wish I could show you guys, but Facebook doesn't allow me to show you my screen. We get their address details, what title they're going to use, their bio, anything that they want us to include in the show notes. That's kind of the main stuff that we do. We simply send them one link. So one link, and the form opens up. As soon as they've hit submit on that form, it comes straight back through to me, and I've got all of that information at my fingertips. In the instance that you're working with a team on your podcast, and you might have to have one person that's doing the interview and somebody else, or you're doing the interview and somebody else is perhaps populating the show notes, someone else might be doing the iTunes information or the Libsyn information, then having everything in one central place makes life so much easier. So that is the form that I recommend. And like I said, it can be used for a guest, it can be used for anything at all. But when you're trying to get on a regular basis information back from a third party, then absolutely go down that path, because it saves a lot of heartache and takes away any complication between emailing from one to another. Okay, so that's number one. Now, the other thing that I mentioned at the beginning there was actually booking in appointments. When you are everyone's busy these days. Everyone is busy these days. And it's really hard to just have one single conversation where you go, okay, this is when we're interviewing. Are you available on this date? They go, yes, and come back and it's all done. It just doesn't happen, because most people's diaries conflict, and you have to go back and forth and back and forth. So there is an amazing system online that eliminates all of that back and forth, and it's called Schedule Once. Schedule Once. And Schedule Once is, there's also one called Calendly. There's a few different online calendar applications, but the beauty of this is literally, I like that too. It's amazing. So literally you can either have consistent times in your calendar that you make available for people to make appointments with you, or you can do specific times that you're available. So I might say, yep, I'm always available on Wednesday between 9 and 5, and I can just open that up forevermore and people can book appointments. Or I might say, look, I only want to do my podcast interviews, which is what we do, 1 week of the month, and this is the week, and these are the times. Now, I'll totally be honest with you guys, it actually took a while to get to that point. I originally started off just doing interviews whenever it suited the guest, and it became so overwhelming as we got busier with the show, because some weeks I'd have 2 interviews, other weeks I'd have 7 interviews, and it's really hard to kind of get your brain into the focus of, what are you doing? What are the questions? All that type of thing. So we found by actually opening up the calendar, showing availability for 1 week only, we've named it the interview week, and then people can only book into that week for that one time per month. You can use this equally in your fitness business. It uses the same principles, and it just puts you in so much more control of your time, and it really helps you with batching, with allocating or grouping together specific tasks at different times. So that one was Schedule Once. Absolutely love that tool. The other one that I wanted to tell you about, or there's 2 more systems I wanted to tell you about. One, and some of you guys might know this already, it's called Reve, R-E-V. Maybe give me a little love heart or a thumbs up if you know Reve. If you don't know Reve, this is an amazing platform, and you can use it in many different ways. So essentially what we do is, once a show has been recorded and we've got the audio format, I upload that audio file into Reve. As I said, REV, it's it's just a URL that you go to, and you pay a small fee and they transcribe that interview. So it goes from an audio file into a written file. Now that can help you in any number of ways. You can then utilize that written file to include on your website, which we do. So we have an audio and a written. You can utilize that written file to take extracts. So when you're actually doing your promotion of the show and you want to grab out some bullet points, or you want to grab an inspirational quote or just an extract from what your guest might have been talking about, then believe me, it makes it so much easier to grab that from a written file than it does to sit down and try and listen to the audio and retype what you've actually heard. So Reve is an amazing service. Not only do they, hey Emma, thanks for tuning in. Not only do Reve do transcripts of audio files and video files for that matter, they also do a fantastic job of captioning your video files. So that's another service that you can utilize them for. And you guys will actually see I'm just about to load up a whole lot of our podcast partner videos, and they've captioned the whole lot of them. So that's a service that I really highly recommend. We've been using them for about probably 18 months now. And the other great thing about Reve is how fast they are. They turn around transcripts within a couple of hours. It's absolutely phenomenal. Now, the third system that I want to tell you about when it comes to streamlining our podcast process actually falls into the marketing and promotions end of things. So we talked about, I guess, the beginning of the process when we're organizing our guest and getting interviews, getting information rather for our guest. We talked about the Reve transcript, the guest information form. Now I want to talk to you about actually using a system to streamline your social media posts. Now, many of you might already use this, but I always keep coming back to it because no matter how many times I tell people, there are still people out there that don't know about this service, and it really does change your world. So we use a particular platform called CoSchedule, and you might know some others like Hootsuite is another example. Now, platforms like CoSchedule and Hootsuite basically allow you to grab your content that you've created, that you've produced, upload it into one singular platform, and then distribute it to multiple platforms, social media platforms. So to put that into real context, we will take a finished show of the Fitness Business Podcast. We'll upload the link to the show, which links through to the website. We'll upload an image that goes with it into this one platform. We do that once, only once. And then you have the option to select which associated media platforms you actually want to distribute to. So for us, for example, we go on to Google, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter. And I've left Facebook out for a reason. I'll tell you why. So we go onto those 4 platforms. We can schedule it at a specific time of day. So it can be released that day, it can be released another day at a particular time. You can choose the time, or you can actually allow the system in CoSchedule to tell you what the most effective time is for you to release that content. Now, as you can imagine, for anyone that does manage multiple social media channels, how time consuming and fiddly is it when you've got one piece of content and you go onto one platform and post it, and then you cut and paste and go onto another platform and cut and paste and go onto another one. I just love the time-saving capabilities of these platforms, of CoSchedule in particular. Now, the reason I left out Facebook is this. When the algorithm changes came in February of this year, one of the things that we heard from Facebook is that they don't necessarily love third-party applications to send through content. So as soon as that came out, as soon as that news came out, we changed the way that we do things. And I'm sure there's others of you out there that probably did the same thing. We changed the way that we do things. So we do use CoSchedule for all those other platforms. But for Facebook, we publish directly on Facebook, or schedule directly on Facebook. So we've been doing that pretty much since February of this year for that reason. But nonetheless, the fact that you can do all those other platforms through one singular application is a massive, massive time saver. So guys, I want to thank you for tuning in, and I hope you learned a few bits and pieces when it comes to streamlining your podcasts. Like I said, we talked about the guest information form, we talked about Reve, CoSchedule, and Schedule Once, which is that calendar application. So if you've got any questions, if you want links, as a matter of fact, I'll just pop the links down the bottom there so you can check them out at any time. And please, if you do have questions, make sure that you hit me up in the comments below. that's all I've got for you this week. And I did want to mention that today's episode features Carrie Bedgood from Active Wellness, and she steps us through a 10 steps to membership promotion, to creating a membership promotion. They are really good steps, and to be totally honest, it's probably the most succinct description that I've ever had anyone give on just stepping through a membership promotion. So what I recommend is, regardless of if you have a great process for your membership promotions already, I'm lost for words, have a listen anyway, because it might be a couple of little bits that you pick up on that Carrie talks about that you might be able to tweak in the way that you do things, or you might not have thought about in the way that you do things. So that episode is live right now. It is available right now, so you can go and check it out. It's episode 170 of the Fitness Business Podcast. So guys, that's all from me today. I'm signing off right now because my family and my two beautiful fur kids, we're about to jump in the car and do a little road trip for a couple of days. I'm going to take a couple of days off after what has been a very big year already so far. So I look forward to seeing you guys this time next week. We're going to continue on. We've only got 2 more episodes left of this podcast series, How to Start Your Own Podcast. So guys, I look forward to seeing you back here next week. And thank you so much for joining me once again. See you later, guys.